What's up and welcome to week 7 of the NFL season already?
Yep.
Week 7, setting the edge, daily fantasy sports and gambling show. Welcome back, boys. We're back. I'm joined with my co-host, as always, Ryan Zamichelli, at The Great Zambino on Twitter, with an A, of course. And we're joined once again by DraftKings Playbook contributor and DFS Report contributor, Eric Rasmussen, at Razzle11Grinds, returning once again to discuss more of our DraftKings guy than we are, so that's always helpful to have. But welcome back again, boys. How are we today? And how excited are we for this slate, for this Sunday Main Slate?
I've never been better. I'm really excited to get this weekend kicked off. A lot of value to be had in a lot of different places. How about you, Eric?
I'm ready for it to get to the weekend. It's been a long week already for me, so I'm just looking forward to lineup building, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, man. A lot of news been coming out, but we're going to start up here with the Browns at the Bengals. Bengals are -10 favorites on my book, and the over-under here is set at 45.5. Here's some quick notes and key stats for you guys. The Browns are 30th in DVOA in the pass game and 28th in yards allowed per pass attempt. The Bengals are 11th in DVOA in yards per pass and and 6th in yards per pass attempt. I'm looking at some stats here from the Browns. The Bengals have allowed recent great games to some running backs, slot receivers, and tight ends. I just want to run through those real quick. The Bengals defense has given up 5 for 59 against Forte, 7 for 54 and a touchdown against Quincy Enunwa, 7 for 61 against Landry, 4 for 53 and a touchdown against Beasley, 7 for 162 and 1 touchdown versus Gronk, and 8 for 47 and 2 touchdowns for James White. So there's a little bit of a trend with people who are guarding the running back, slot, and tight end position, which makes me think to Duke Johnson in the GPP here. But I think it goes without saying who I like in cash. Here's some notes here on the Browns as well. Only Kirk Cousins hasn't thrown for over 275 yards passing against the Browns. Every quarterback that has played the Browns has thrown for 2 touchdowns, with Tannehill, Cousins, Brady, and Mariota throwing 3. The Browns have scored 20 or more points in 4 of 6 games this year. And the Browns have also allowed only 1 running back to go over 80 yards in total this year. And they have also held Ryan Matthews, DeMarco Murray, Terrence West, and LeGarrette Blount all under 4 yards per carry. I'm going to shoot it over to you, Ryan. Who are you looking at in this game in a DFS perspective?
Yeah, when I look at this game, immediately I look to A.J. Green at wide receiver. And the reason I do that is because in every single game this season, the Browns have allowed the top targeted player on the opposing team to get 10 targets or more at every game except for the Redskins game, where Jordan Reed, or actually I believe Jordan Reed might have had 10. If not, he had 9, and he still scored twice. So I look at A.J. Green right off the bat, and I think that he can be a top play, a safe cash game play, and a guy with a really high ceiling for GPP plays. But I do think that he'll be quite a hefty play, probably maybe up to 20% ownership, especially in cash. And then also another thing that I found on Twitter, was shown on Twitter, was Andy Dalton's statistics this year, in his career rather, against common and uncommon opponents. Common meaning pretty much like a rival or a team that he plays frequently, like a division team, and an uncommon opponent being a team that he doesn't play as frequently. And against common opponents, which the Browns would be, he's 7-11 win and loss. And then his touchdown interception ratio, 19 touchdowns to 23 interceptions. Against uncommon opponents, he's 14-1-1 with a 34-16 touchdown interception ratio. So with this being a common opponent in the Browns, albeit it is the Browns, I think that there's reason to pump the brakes. It could be a really big tournament play, but I don't like him very much in cash for these.
All right, Eric, what are your thoughts on the Bengals Browns here?
Basically, like everybody on the Bengals offense, for one reason or another. I know you're making comments about the Bengals running backs going against the Browns, and it might be a tougher matchup, but I still expect game flow to have them be involved. Obviously, A.J. Green's the best play. I'm actually going to sneak in some Tyler Eifert as long as he's officially back, just because the Browns do suck so bad against tight ends. And I always like to see guys that we thought were going to be pretty big contributors coming into the season. I like to see them their first game back. I'd rather play them than play the wait and see game, and just kind of be behind everybody else.
Yeah, I'm with you on that there. In Tyler Eifert's last game against Cleveland, he was 5 for 53 and 3 touchdowns. So, hey, there might be something there for that. I didn't hate, Ryan, to your point, I don't hate Andy Dalton, honestly, because he's probably going to throw for 275 yards and 2 touchdowns, albeit he might throw a pick, but I think he's pretty much locked in for that. But by no means in a cash game I would want to play him and A.J. Green together. That's just really asking for it, because as much as I really like A.J. Green and he's potentially a cash game play for me, there are games he'll get 4 catches for 70 yards and won't do you any good. But that hasn't been the case for him necessarily recently, and I think this is such a great spot. The Browns haven't really been able to stop anyone this year. So that's something I'm definitely looking at. A.J. Green pretty much my top play out of this. And if I'm looking GPP, I don't know if I really want to touch LaFell or Boyd, but there's definitely merit for myself to have multiple Bengals stacks just in case they decide to load it up and score like 40 points on them. Any final words on this game, though?
Nah, everything.
I might take Browns. You can go. You can go.
I guess I would look at maybe Duke Johnson, just because of the receiving backs have gone against Cincinnati. So, and especially if Terrell Pryor doesn't play, as he seems to be pretty limited, I think Duke Johnson then sees a little bit more.
Great GPP play, honestly. And I don't hate the Browns at +10, potentially backdoor covering. We said it on the show last week. I was loving the dogs, and they were one of the dogs that backdoor covered for us. So let's move on to the next game here. We got the Redskins at the Lions. Lions I have on my book are -1 favorites with a nice over/under here at 50 points. Now here's some. There's a bunch of stats I have for this game. The Lions' run defense ranks 26th in DVOA and 27th in yards per carry allowed. The Skins' run offense is 4th in DVOA and 4th in yards per carry. The Lions' pass defense is 31st in DVOA and 26th in yards per pass allowed. The Skins' run defense is 31st in DVOA and 32nd in yards per carry allowed. The Lions' pass offense is 7th overall in DVOA and 8th overall in yards per pass attempt. The Skins' offensive line ranks 6th in adjusted line yards, which means Lions' yards are responsible, the offensive linemen getting the credit on that. And the Lions have given up the 3rd most passing touchdowns this year. Some more notes. Jamison Crowder has seen 9 red zone targets this year and 4 within the 10-yard line. The biggest jump with Jordan Reed being out was Pierre Garçon. He saw 11 targets last game. A nice point per dollar flex position spot. And 3 of those targets were within the 10-yard line. Usually Garçon only sees 5 to 7 targets per game, and seeing 11 is great news. The Lions are 23rd overall DVOA to tight ends. Although I only think Vernon Davis is a GPP play, that's something to definitely look at, especially in the red zone. Marvin Jones has not gone over 8 targets in the last 4 weeks, although he still is one of the best raw points players that you can play, especially at his value. And something to keep an eye on is Riddick and Ebron's status on the Lions. That's a lot of changes to that offense if either of them are in or out all the way through. Let's kick it over to you, Eric. What are your thoughts on the Skins and Lions?
Well, with the Skins, there's so much, I guess, uncertainty with their offense in general. I really like Matt Jones, but hearing that Deshaun Jackson hasn't practiced the last couple days, Jordan Reed's still going through the concussion issue. I don't know that I can go to Pierre Garçon. Maybe just a personal preference. I'd probably look elsewhere. If I was going to look for somebody similar to Garçon, I'd just look to the other side and take Golden Tate. Because Washington is 32nd in the league against wide receiver 2s. So I think that's a pretty good matchup for him. But really, aside from that, I guess there isn't a lot I'm using in this game. I wrote up Jamison Crowder just because I love his ability to return punts, and it's a GPP stack with the Redskins defense, just because of how often or how much Detroit throws the ball. So,
right, Ryan, what about you, man? What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, when I look at this game, I definitely am looking right to Matt Jones. The Lions' run defense just isn't very good. And then not having Jordan Reed is a big red zone detriment to that offense. If he is indeed not able to play, as he hasn't practiced yet, and he has an appointment with an independent neurologist tomorrow to see what the status is for his concussion protocol. If you're looking at him on DraftKings, you're getting him at $4,200. That price range is comparable to a guy like Jaquiz Rogers, who I'm sure we're going to talk plenty about later. He's a very good salary relief option, who's going to get a lot of touches, going to play a bad defense. And I think at the end of the day, he could end up with a decent ownership. And then if you look at him on FanDuel, you're getting him at $6,700. That price range is comparable to a guy like Jeremy Hill, Jamal Charles, Matt Forte, or Jerick McKinnon, all of which are guys who I am gross. Like Matt Jones is by far the best option in that price range on FanDuel, in my opinion. On DraftKings, I think there's argument to be had between him and Jaquiz Rogers. Jacquizz Rodgers is going to be a very, very heavy chalk play. So I think if you want to get the less chalky play at that mid to low 4,000 range on DraftKings, then Matt Jones is probably your way to go. And then Raz brought up really great points at the wide receiver spot with the wide receiver 2 hurt for the, I believe you mentioned the Lions. And with Marvin Jones last week, I was all aboard the Marvin Jones train last week and opened the game with the touchdown right out of the gate and disappeared really after that. And this week, if Norman ends up shadowing Marvin Jones, then Marvin Jones is essentially dead in the water for me. So I think Golden Tate in that position would become a very, very good option. I guess if anything else comes out throughout the week about Josh Norman following him, then I think Golden Tate, his value increases. And I think Pierre Garçon is a strict GPP play who has a high ceiling if Jordan Reed isn't in fact out because of, you mentioned, the target increase. And then if he's able to get into the end zone at $3,700 on DraftKings, and then also very low priced at $6,100. If you're stuck in that price range on FanDuel, then he might be a good option in the tournament.
Yeah, and honestly, I think I'd lead just to Crowder over Garçon just because Crowder takes the punts, and it's always nice when your guy runs you back a punt. So, but I love look, they're both at the same value on FanDuel, 6.2 for Crowder, 6.1 for Garçon. So it's something to take a look at. But I think I like the Redskins +1 on the road. Although I am afraid of how Kirk Cousins is not very good on the road. He just looks so good, and the Lions can't stop anyone. And as I mentioned, keep an eye on Riddick and Ebron. But Redskins might be where I'm leaning. Well, let's move on to the next game here. Some game I think that might go a wee bit overlooked, but not in my perspective. This game just kind of blares out to me because I love both of these teams. We got the Raiders at the Jags here. Jaguars are -1 with the over-under set here on my book at 47.5. Quick Vegas note, 85% of the money is on Oakland, and the line has not changed. Something to put in your back pocket there.
Is that 85% of the bets or 85% of the money?
85% of the bets, I believe.
So then what that means is
the
that
Sharps
are
on Jags.
Yeah.
Sharps are on Jags here, and that's where I kind of am. But everyone is all aboard, according to Vegas Insider and a couple other articles I've read. 85% 80% of the money is over on Oakland. So I like me the Jags here in this situation, -1. The Oakland defense stinks, and both of these defense stink, honestly. So this over might be in play too. But here's some notes I collected here. Jags run defense ranks 27th DVOA and 12th in yards per carry allowed. Oakland run offense, which is pretty much a crapshoot, but they are 9th DVOA and 3rd in yards per carry. The Jags pass defense ranks 8th in DVOA and 3rd yards allowed per pass attempt. Oakland offense is 5th in DVOA, the pass offense that is, and they're 21st in yards per pass attempt. Terrible run defense versus a terrible Jags run offense is pretty much some of that. Oakland's pass defense ranks 28th DVOA and 32nd in yards allowed per pass attempt. And the Jags pass offense hasn't shown himself yet, but they rank 27th DVOA and 23rd in yards per pass attempt. I'm all aboard these Jaguars and GPPs especially. I love me some Allen Robinson in cash. I think he's as good as it gets for a play this week. Honestly, Ryan, playing your boy Allen, your favorite player on the Jaguars, Allen Hurns, in a GPP, because I think this is the game where he torches down the sideline for a deep pass. That's my opinion on this game, but I think there's a lot of fantasy goodness here. We can do a nice double stack with Carr, Cooper, and then toss in Allen Hurns or Robinson. I think there's a lot of merit for those plays. Love me some Crabtree and GPP. 47.5 total here at a game where I don't think everyone's going to be looking. I think there's a lot of fantasy goodness here. Ryan, start us off here. What are your thoughts?
All right, yeah. So with that Allen Hurns mention you had there, I mean, I guess if there's any game that Allen Hurns could go off, it would be against the worst defense in the NFL in Oakland so far. I think I saw somewhere that they were allowing some 7 yards per play or something along those lines. What does worry me, especially along with the fact that Allen Hurns doesn't get the volume that people seem to think he gets when he ends up with that long touchdown and ends up with a 20-point day, but it'll be on 5 receptions, is that he didn't practice today on Thursday.
Yep.
So that's a little scary, especially if you're locking in on a Thursday through Monday contest in a GPP. However, I do love the Allen Robinson, Blake Bortles stack. When I was building my cash lineup earlier in the week, I had plugged Blake Bortles in there because he's only 7.4 on FanDuel. Comparatively, he's pretty middle of the road price against a really, really bad defense. I believe they're at home this week then as well. Yeah, they are in Jacksonville. So I think that the cross-country travel for the Oakland, essentially an 11 a.m. game, that doesn't bode well for the Raiders defense, especially. So I'm all over Allen Robinson. I've got him in my DraftKings tournament lineup and then in the FanDuel cash lineup. I think he's a really, really good option. I'm not touching the running game whatsoever. Looking at the tight ends, I don't really see much I like. And then, oh God, if you take a defense in this game, that's the most confusing play I've liked.
Hey, you know what? A defense might win someone in this game because both quarterbacks are turnover prone for the most part, especially Bortles. But let's swing it over to you, Eric. What do you got for us here in this Raiders-Jaguars game?
I don't know what to do with the Jaguars offense. Bortles has had a couple of matchups that we think he should have just torched already this season. And they, at San Diego versus the Colts, Chicago. He still ended up doing all right in 2 of those 3 games, but I just don't know what's going on. He and Robinson just don't look the same that they did last year. So I like Robinson. I just don't know if he's safe enough for cash the way that they've been playing right now. Even last week he only had 6 targets, and I'm not really sure why. I guess the one thing I might be on more is Oakland. People are going to see that Jacksonville is 8th against the pass. But for whatever reason, they get torched by the receivers. They're 21st against wide receiver 1s and 26th against wide receiver 2s. So that kind of tells me I might be able to get Cooper or Crabtree at a lower ownership. Pro Football Focus has Jalen Ramsey shadowing Cooper, and people are going to think because of Ramsey's big name, as a rookie coming out of a big school, that's a matchup to avoid when actually that's the easier of the 2 matchups according to their rankings. So,
yep.
The running backs in this game, I want nothing to do with anybody. If Latavius Murray's out, I might look at Jalen Richard, but I don't think you need to because there's so much value in some of the other injuries that have happened. I did write him up as a possible stack with the Oakland defense just because we know that Bortles will turn the ball over, at some point in the game. So it's really all I have. I want to be on this game because on the surface it appears like it should be a lot of points, but I don't really see it.
Hey, you told all totally valid points there. And here's a little, tidbit of information as well. The Jags have only given up 2 100-yard games to wide receivers this season, and they were to Travis Benjamin and Cam Meredith, and then Alshon Jeffrey got 93 on them. So something to account for here. But I do love me some Cooper. I say it this week. I pretty much say it every week. Like I will probably play cash lineup with Amari Cooper in it, like 9 times out of 10. Honestly, I love that guy, and I love the connection between him and Carr. So, but I think it might be on the Jaguars in this game. They're 4-1 against the spread this year. Moving on to the next game, Kansas City Chiefs hosting the New Orleans Saints. I have the Saints here at a plus 6.5 dog with an over/under here at 50.5. Here's some keynotes for you guys here. The Chiefs' pass defense ranks 6th in DVOA and 13th in yards allowed per pass attempt. The Saints' run defense ranks 30th in DVOA and 22nd in yards allowed per carry. The Saints' pass defense is 26th in DVOA and 23rd in yards allowed per pass attempt. I don't hate this Kansas City Chiefs shared, passing attack here. Honestly, I don't I don't hate anyone on the Chiefs offensively, but I don't love any of them either. Someone like I think all these guys have a pretty decent floor, but they have zero upside. Kelsey, Macklin, and Spencer Ware, and with quote unquote Jamal Charles being sprinkled in. Do you believe that like this Kansas City backfield can get 30 total carries? Because then that totally merits playing one at like Spencer Ware, who I think is on a lot of people's radar for like a cash game play here, sitting at about 7,000 on FanDuel specifically. But I don't know if I can merit playing any of these guys in cash, in my opinion. Although I think I do want me some Mark Ingram GPP action with some Kobe Fleener and Michael Thomas as well. Ingram has gotten 18, 24, and 19 touches in his last 3 games. But we know he's gotten touchdown hawked by John Kuhn, so and by anyone in the red zone, honestly. So he's been really getting screwed over there. If I'm leaning anywhere in this game, I like the Chiefs minus 6.5 and the under at 50, under 50.5. But I'm going to kick it over to you, Eric. What do you got for me in this Chiefs Saints game? You're on mute, Eric. Ryan, shoot ahead.
This Chiefs Saints game, what I'm looking to is like you could look at the Chiefs running game for a nice little. It'd be a risky play because you're not sure at the end of the day what Jamal Charles or Spencer Ware are going to get, like what the timeshare, what the workload is going to be. I don't like any of the wide receiver options, as you mentioned. Very low ceilings, I would think, because Alex Smith isn't going to throw the ball 40 times a game. Probably not going to lock in on one target throughout the game. And then when I look at the aerial attack for New Orleans, they're in Kansas City, and their offense really isn't the same. It isn't quite to like the New Orleans Saints offensive standard once they're out of their dome. And then Kansas City has pretty much an elite cornerback in Marcus Peters. And so he scares me a little bit if I'm looking to play somebody against him. Other than that, like there's nothing I'm really loving in this game. There's nothing I'm really hating in this game. But all in all, I can't see any situation where in cash play I pick anybody from this game. GPP, I'm sure there's arguments to be made across the board, especially like I said in that Kansas City backfield. But other than that, I'm not finding all too much that I like there.
Eric, what are your thoughts on this Chiefs Saints game?
Most people are initially just going to look away from Breeze just because of his home road splits. I actually think he makes a great tournament play this weekend because nobody's talking about him. And we know he has the ability to put up yards, and yards can lead to touchdowns. You don't necessarily have to stack him with anybody. However, I really like Michael Thomas. PFF's got him going up against Philip Gaines, who's one of the lowest rated corners in the NFL. The Chiefs don't shadow, so Marcus Peters is going to line up on the right side of the offense basically the entire time. So I do expect the Saints to move Cooks around to try to find him the right matchup. So I think Cooks makes an interesting GPP play. As far as Kansas City, a lot of people want to be on Alex Smith because they see the matchup, and I just don't think he has the ceiling to play in GPPs. And then, everybody thinks Macklin's a great play, and PFF has him being shadowed by Ken Crawley, who is a pretty badly rated corner. So people are going to see that and think Macklin's going to have a field day. But what they don't realize is the Saints have really blanketed wide receiver ones. So they put their worst corner of the 3 on the best receiver, but then they have coverage over the top to help protect them. So for me, I'm not looking to play Macklin at all, which is really weird to say considering Kansas City rarely plays in an over-under of 50.
Yep.
Or higher.
Exactly.
So, I'll definitely use some Kelsey. I think Conley makes an interesting GPP play. And, I guess Tyreek Hill's always a flyer because he also is their punt returner too. So, and their coaching staff thinks that he's the fastest player in the NFL today. So he's a dangerous guy. He just doesn't see the targets enough. So ultimately, I think I'm probably staying away from this game, but I can make a case for some GPP plays out of the Saints.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw Tyreek Hill get 7 targets at Pittsburgh back on October 2nd, but other than that, he's touchdown reliant unless he runs back there. But overall, this isn't something I'm looking to build my lineup around. But someone from this game could win a tournament. I don't mind Conley, as you mentioned, and I love Michael Thomas. He's honestly pretty safe play. Honestly, he's pretty much got hitting value for everyone each week, so it's something to take a look at there. Next game I'm going to move on to, we got the Bills at the Dolphins. Over under here at 44. The news bomb was just dropped on us that Shady McCoy will not be playing. He's out with a hamstring injury, putting Mike Gillespie in the starting spot. Pretty much all him there because we have not seen Reggie Bush at all, nor we have seen Jerome Felton or Jonathan Williams whatsoever from the Bills. And you're pretty much getting Gillespie, whatever you want to pronounce his name, Gillespie, pretty much at lowest value you can. Stick him in your cash lineups because this Dolphins team is terrible against the run defense. They rank 24th DVOA and 25th in yards allowed per carry. Their offense stinks. They can't pass the ball whatsoever. They rank 29th DVOA and 5th in yards per pass attempt, which kind of skewed numbers there, but they're not efficient, whatever, throwing the ball. And the Bills' run offense ranks 2nd in DVOA and 1st in yards per carry. And the Bills have to funnel their offense through the ground because they don't have any receivers, in my opinion, that are worth merit playing in a cash game. That is, in the GPP, you can toss out Marquise Goodwin or Justin Hunter, but good luck trying to get a high return on investment playing those guys every week, in my opinion. So really, in this game, all in all, cash game Bills, and then GPP, I'm looking at like Ajayi because Pro Football Focus has him as the number 5th overall rusher, and he saw 48 snaps last week. Although this Bills defense is very good, that's why I like him as a GPP play. No one will be on him, even though the monstrous game last week. The Bills are 2nd in the NFL in sacks with 20. And Tannehill has been sacked 17th time, which is the 4th most in the NFL. And the Finns have the worst pass blocking line in the entire NFL, according to Football Outsiders. And the Bills will have Nickel Roby Coleman. Pro Football Focus's 7th rated corner on Landry this game. So it's pretty much stopping all the Dolphins' offense here. You can get the Bills at -3. I like that. I like the under 44. I don't think there's going to be much scoring in this game, and I think Gillespie scores a touchdown to make all those cash game players happy. Eric, I'm going to shoot it on over to you. What else is there to love from this Bills-Dolphins game?
There's nothing else really to love. I might use some Charles Clay in some spots, as long as he's good to go. And then one of the Dolphins wide receivers is probably going to make a big play just because Buffalo can be beat deep. They just were by Torrey Smith and Colin Kaepernick. So I would probably look to Kenny Stills. Devontae Parker actually has the best matchup of the 3, but he's kind of disappeared the last handful of weeks. So I guess I wouldn't be shocked if Stills catches a 50-plus yard touchdown in this game. But, aside from the guys that we talked about and Gillespie, I'm not touching anybody else in this game.
Yep. Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, Gillespie is the big guy who stands out to everybody and their mother who's going to look at this game. On DraftKings, he's minimum priced at $3,000, so you plug him in there and you can get a lot of value there. And if you're looking at a cash game and you want to just open it up to pay up absurd amounts everywhere else on FanDuel, you can plug him and Jaquiz Rogers in, both at $5,600 or less. That'd be the chalkiest backfield that you could build, but it would also be the most value backfield that you could build. Initially, when I heard the Shady McCoy news, I thought I was texting you, Ronnie. I said it kind of scares me that immediately everybody's gonna go on Gillespie, but then I was like, what are the chances that they go to one of the other running backs there? And then I looked at throughout the snap counts throughout this season, And Gillislee has been the clear number 2. There is no other running back getting many snaps, no other running back getting many touches. And Gillislee is all in all just he was the number 2 man, clear cut, and now without McCoy, he's definitely one of the top plays. I think you could go for 20-point game on FanDuel, and then at 5,300, you're going to be choking on the chalk, but you're also going to be getting a lot of value that allows you to pay up elsewhere. GPP, he's not going to be contrarian at all. I think if you plug him into a tournament, then you're basically just writing off that position as if I play, say, like on FanDuel, you're playing a 2, 4, 6. You're playing a 7 or 8 person lineup instead of a 9 person lineup if you put in Gillislee, because everybody else is going to have him, and you're just banking on the fact that you can separate yourself with a contrarian play elsewhere in that lineup. But I don't have any other targets in this game whatsoever.
I have one last note that could bode well for Gillislee. The Finns are without Pro Football Focus's number 3 strong safety, Rashard Jones, for the rest of the season, and he has been excellent against the run this year. So that's something that could bode well for Gillislee. Strong safety coming over the top to end plays. Like I said, bodes well for him. Let's move on to the next game, where there's also probably not a lot of fantasy goodness for our sake. We got the Ravens traveling up to play the Jets. Jets are -1 favorites. The over-under at a putrid 40.5. Do I really need to say much else other than if you want to play Brandon Marshall, it's awesome. Go right on ahead because he's a pure volume play, and he's going to see 12-plus targets pretty much anyway. And, the Geno Smith stats with Marshall look pretty decent. And looking at the Ravens side, Dennis Pitta has seen 8 targets in 4 out of 6 games, 10 targets last week. Mike Wallace, 9+ targets in 3 straight games. Baltimore defense is very much in play because Geno Smith is going to turn the ball over. Brashard Perryman, I've played 70% of the snaps recently, and especially Steve Smith is out, something to look at in a GPP. And keep an eye out on Joe Flacco's status. If for whatever reason he is out, bang the under, 1. And 2, you can play the Jets defense. I don't think I have much else to say here. Honestly, I don't think there's much merit for many other players in a cash game format. Sure, you can play Nua as a touchdown-dependent contrarian play, but him and Geno don't have any connection, so it's going to be really tough. I'm going to shoot this over to you, Eric. Is there anything you like in this Ravens-Jets game?
Most likely both defenses. Even if Flacco does play, being limited, himself limited, and then his receiving options have been hurt. I think both defenses are in play, especially with such a low over/under. I guess the one, I look at Terrence West, the way he's been running the ball for Baltimore. I think he's certainly an option. And then actually somebody I might use over, like instead of Brandon Marshall, just because of the way it looked last week. When Smith came in, he didn't target Brandon Marshall once when he took over for Fitzpatrick last weekend. So I'm actually looking at Sharon Peak. He picked up 10 targets last week. At least half of them came when Geno Smith came into the game. You got to figure, since Geno's been the backup so far, he's been practicing basically with Sharon Peak and somebody like Robbie Anderson with the second team this whole season so far. So we've seen it in years past that when guys get promoted to take over the starting quarterback role, they rely on the guys that they spent most of their practice time with. So to me, he's a big GPP flyer and somebody that I will have somewhere. I'm not really sure which site yet, but it all depends on how I want to construct my rosters because everybody's going to pay down at running back, so I might pay up and then find a value at wide receiver.
Yeah, that's looking like the GPP strategy for me. I wouldn't be worried about Kenbrell Tompkins taking away, Sharon Peak's targets because Kenbrell Tompkins stinks, and 10 targets, you can't not look at that, especially what we've seen from backup role players such as Cam Meredith coming on in out of Storm and taking these targets that are supposed to be there. Ryan, do you have any thoughts on this Ravens-Jets game?
Throughout the Twitter machine, I've seen a lot of people lose their minds about how in the one meaningful game that Geno Smith played last year, he targeted Brandon Marshall 10 times. But if you look at his career lineups, he's or his career numbers with Geno. His splits aren't anything special whatsoever. Like you mentioned, like spot on. It's a pure volume play if you're taking him because it's not an outstanding matchup. Jimmy Smith is still a quality corner. He returned to practice earlier in the week. I believe I saw, and he just isn't Geno Smith isn't the type of quarterback that, regardless of whether he's targeting a guy 10 times, that necessarily is going to get in the end zone because don't believe that he's going to be able to drive the ball in the Ravens defense. Don't believe that he's going to be able to throw the ball deep to Brandon Marshall. Don't believe in Geno Smith whatsoever. So yeah, with Brandon Marshall, I'm not really too big a fan on that one. Probably going to be way higher owned than I would be comfortable taking him at. And yeah, I'm going to stay away from him. I'm going to be staying away from everything in this game, maybe except for the defense.
Yeah, honestly. Am I crazy for liking the Jets -1 or what? I'm like eating a lot of poop with that lineup. Like I feel like I'm just taking a piece of dog turd and biting it. But they're -1 for a reason, right? Right. No, all right, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a feeling either way, just because even when Flacco plays, the Ravens haven't exactly torn it up and put away teams that they should or anything. So I can see it, and obviously, when quarterback changes are made, sometimes offenses react positively, and it gives them kind of a spark. So I'm not saying Geno Smith is going to spark the offense, but it's certainly something that could happen.
Hey, you're right, and I'm seeing them up at -2 now in my book, so something I might have to hop on before it gets out of hand. Next game, also not a lot of fantasy goodness, but that's in my opinion. We got the Vikings traveling out to Philadelphia, play the Eagles. Eagles are +2.5 right now, with an over/under at 40. Next, please, anyone got plays in this game? Who wants to step on up? Defense. Who wants to step on up to the table and give me like a bold pick? Who that's going to win someone a tournament here?
Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
I got to look at his matchup, but yeah, Pro Football Focus has him going up against Jalen Mills, who has a 38.8 rating, which I think might be the worst.
Yeah, Jalen Mills allows a lot. Like I watched every Eagles game. Jalen Mills allows a lot of receptions, but he doesn't often allow a lot of yards after reception.
I mean, with Diggs, we want him to get his targets again. And when he gets those targets, we've seen what he's capable of doing. So if he's he's back to being healthy, that's a matchup I definitely like. And I don't mind, I'm not playing Sam Bradford, but I like the idea of him going back to Philadelphia after the trade in the offseason. And I kind of like him to come out and just kind of say thank you to Philadelphia for trading him. But that might just be my Viking fanness coming out of me. But
there you go. Eagles fan over there. Is this the mortal lock of the century you got over there?
Me personally, I don't really look too much into NFL betting lines, but one of my close friends who's a very, very heavy sports bettor, just like one little example is he bet $25,000 on the Jaguars to cover week 1, and they did. He said on Twitter this week that he has never had a stronger play in his life. He's like, this is an impartial play. Than the Eagles at I think it opened at +1 and now it's up to like +2.5. He said he's never seen a bigger Vegas trap than opening that line, and he said he's hammering the Eagles and he will never bet another sports game if the Eagles don't cover. I'm just the messenger here. Don't shoot the messenger if it doesn't cover. But he's a very, very high volume gambler who said it was his heaviest play he's ever had. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt at the end of the day. But personally, I can't figure out where the value would come from. I think if he turns out to be correct, then it's going to be like a 17-14 game without a lot of DFS production anyway.
Yeah. I have it at +2.5 here in the Eagles. Has it changed at all? No, I can get it at +3. I think people are going to be hammering this Minnesota line, honestly. But hey, this is going to be something interesting for me to take a look at. But I will shoot you if they don't cover, so keep that in mind.
Well, one stat I saw today was Carson Wentz has the worst completion percentage in the NFL when facing nickel defenses. And Minnesota runs a ton of nickel defense because they want Rhodes, Terrence Newman, and Captain Munnerlyn out covering guys. So that's something that kind of scares me a little bit. If you're looking at any kind of Philadelphia offense or anything.
Yeah, I don't really see merit for myself to play any of these guys in the GPP minus the outsider of Diggs, in my opinion. But I don't know. I don't have enough balls to play Sammy Sleeves GPP tourney. Welcome home to Philly. But that's just me. Let's move on to the next game here. Colts at the Titans. I got the Titans -3 and the over-under here at 48. Let's remind everyone, the Colts run defense, worst in the league. Tennessee run offense, one of the best in the league. Colts pass defense, one of the worst in the league. But the Titans aim to run the ball, play solid defense. That's just kind of been their offensive philosophy, the entire team philosophy, rather. Tennessee defense has totaled 6 sacks in each of the last 2 games, and the Colts have given up the most sacks in the NFL. As we know, they cannot protect Andrew Luck to do, as a job for their life, anything. The guy goes down every game. DeMarco Murray is highlighting the cash, highlighting everything here. 3rd in the NFL targets inside the 10-yard line and 3 carries within the 5. Everyone loves that. Mariota in cash. I can see it. Don't love it, but I can see it. T.Y. Hilton is going to see a lot of McCourty this week over the top. Something I'm kind of staying away from, my opinion. And honestly, Frank Gore has been as safe as it gets as a play. In GPP perspectives, obviously I love Andrew Luck because he can just light it up. And I like Jack Doyle with Dwayne Allen probably being out. I love the amount of looks he's getting and getting pretty cheap. And I don't hate the Titans defense in this game whatsoever. Titans -3 is my play right now, but I kind of like the under at 48 here. The Colts picked me on the over-under last week. That's scoring late. I like the under in this game personally. I'm going to shoot it on over to you, Eric. Colts Titans.
As far as the Colts, the only person I'm looking at using is Doyle. We've seen it in the past with Colts tight ends. When the number 1 guy goes down, the number 2 guy seems to step up and have some pretty big games. When it was Allen and Fleener, whichever one went down, the other one seemed to step it up. As far as the rest of their offense, we know Luck can throw for a lot of yards. I just don't know if he's going to, 1, have enough time, and 2, have anybody to throw it to. Hilton, McCourty being on Hilton, I know he's not a shutdown kind of guy, but I just kind of expect him to kind of eliminate Hilton and try to make somebody else beat him. And Philip Dorsett's been injured, and that would leave Chester Rogers is the number 2. So there's just nothing about the Colts offense that really excites me. But on the other end, the entire Titans offense excites me, I guess. It's other than DeMarco, and I get Mariota and DeMarco are cash playable. Delaney Walker should be, but he had a dream matchup last week and let everybody down. So as far as wide receivers, I saw Kendall Wright put up a monster game last week. Rashard Matthews has caught touchdowns in back-to-back games. Tajay Sharp's really fallen off and done nothing. So, ultimately it's going to be Mariota, DeMarco, and Delaney Walker for me, and then I'll find spots to sprinkle in on Matthews or Kendall Wright, but I won't include either of those wide receivers in the stack just because I don't think they're reliable enough for me.
Yeah, I'm not ready to put all my eggs in a basket of Rashard Matthews, Kendall Wright, or Tajay Sharp. It's not a good basket of eggs to have. Ryan, I'm gonna shoot that over to you now. Colts and Titans.
Raz pretty much touched on everything. With the Titans, it's all about DeMarco and Mariota for me. I've got Mariota lined up to quarterback a couple of tournaments for me. I think he has a really, really high ceiling this game, as Indiana's defense is just all in all horrific. And then he has the upside on the ground as well. And then DeMarco is, of course, a great option. Then you got a nice value play in Indianapolis for with Doyle at 4.7 on FanDuel and I believe 2.5 on DraftKings. If Dwayne Allen isn't able to go, then you could see a pretty good volume in the red zone. and end up at a very, very low price. He gets you that touchdown, and then he instantly basically reaches value. So I think that he can, if you're looking for a value play somewhere other than running back this week, I think he could be a nice place to look to.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to the next game here. Fantasy goodness. We got the Chargers on the road to play the Falcons. I got the Falcons here at a -6.5 point favorite, and the over/under sitting at 53.5 on my book. So the Chargers pass offense ranks 6th overall in DVOA and 4th in yards per pass attempt. The Atlanta run offense is 8th in DVOA and 13th in yards per carry. The San Diego pass defense is 9th in DVOA and 8th in yards allowed per pass attempt. The Atlanta pass offense is 2nd in DVOA and 1st overall in yards per pass attempt. I love the over in this game. Over. But I also think the Falcons run the ball more than people give them credit for, in my opinion. Rivers and Ryan are both quote-unquote duh plays in this kind of game. This is the same kind of situation we saw with Drew Brees, Cam Newton, although it's not Drew Brees, Cam Newton. We got Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers, the tier 2 guys. Melvin Gordon has the 2nd most carries inside the 10, although his yard per carry sucks. I think Devontae Freeman could see 25-plus total touches this week. I love Julio, as I think he's the strongest raw point play this week, but he's only seen double-digit targets one time, although I don't think that means anything because he can have 7 catches for 180,000 yards. Mo Sanu has seen more of the red zone targets, though. He's seen 3 with 3 within inside. He's seen 6 within 20, 3 within the 10-yard line. And Tyrell the Gazelle, 9 red zone targets, 4 inside of the 10. Another key stat there. And lastly, Hunter Henry saw 68% of the snaps last week, 2 weeks ago, rather, and 84% of the snaps last week. Atlanta ranks 22nd in DVOA versus tight ends. Something to keep a lookout for is whether or not Travis Benjamin will be healthy for this game, because that pretty much will sort out the wide receiver situation between Tyrell Williams, Travis Benjamin, and Dontrell Inman. And especially with the Hunter Henry play, which I love, especially if Travis Benjamin is out. In my opinion, in cash, you're going to have access to these players in this game. It's just where you want to go, whether it's Julio, you want to go one of the cheap receivers in San Diego, or you just want to have one of the quarterbacks. I think all those are fine plays. I'm going to shoot this over to you, Raz. What do you got for me?
I definitely am all over Atlanta. It's trying to figure out who's going to do it, especially at the backfield. Obviously, we know both of them can do it in the same game. And I've been saying that Atlanta runs the ball a little bit more than everybody thinks for, the last couple of years because of, their running backs get quite a bit of touches inside the red zone. So I'm always a fan of including one of their running backs in a stack. Julio, of course, he can just torch anybody. I think Jacob Tammy's in play slightly. I know he's very up and down. I kind of like the matchup for him. As far as Sanu, we saw him go off in week 1 and then he disappeared for a few weeks, and then he had a pretty good game last week. I don't know if he's somebody I can trust at all. I think I'd rather look elsewhere on sites. And then as far as San Diego, I want to think that it's a great spot for San Diego, but then I see the Pro Football Focus matchups, and they have Trufant shadowing Tyrell Williams. And then, looking at the other matchups, the other 2 corners are actually highly rated as well. So I don't really know where to go, especially if Benjamin ends up missing the game or is limited. That kind of scares me because Inman's not somebody that I can trust because he had the one big game and all of a sudden he's had 1 catch each of the last 2 weeks or whatever it is. Hunter Henry's always in play. I just worry that, he had a pretty good game last week, but he only ran like 16 or 17 pass routes in that game. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if Gates is just seeing that much more play. I'd have to look. I know the snap counts are very similar. I just don't know why Henry didn't run as many routes.
Right. Ryan, you were mentioning to me that as well when I was bringing up some of the stats about Hunter Henry. What is your take on this Falcons Chargers game, and where are you looking to get points from this in this game?
I'm pretty much looking the same place everybody else is looking. When I look at Atlanta, I look and I see Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. You stack those two, that could very easily be a 50-point stack between the two. It'll be pricey, but it could definitely pay off big dividends. I think it'll probably be one of the most popular stacks in both tournament and cash game, because in this game it looks like it should be a pretty safe play, and it's also a very high ceiling play, as everybody saw with that Julio Jones, whatever it was, 300-yard game where he had one man to pass Flipper Anderson and wasn't able to do it, or something of that nature for a career or for pass yards or receiving yards in a game, rather. And those two, if you go with the popular value plays, you can definitely fit them into a lineup very reasonably. And then when I look at San Diego, you mentioned that I brought up the Hunter Henry not running a ton of routes. He was getting his target per route run was really high. And I think if that dips even just a little bit, if he keeps the same ballpark of routes run, then his production drops a lot. And then especially if he isn't able to find the end zone. Last week, if he didn't find the end zone, he was still sitting at an 11.3 point FanDuel point day. But for those of you guys looking at his recent games where he's got 14.1, 14.9, and 17.3, you're going to have to remember that Antonio Gates wasn't in a few of those, and then two of those were also against the two worst defenses in the NFL. Last week against the Broncos, that's an impressive performance. You can't deny that, but it also seems like it might not be a sustainable performance. In this situation at tight end, where there isn't a lot to love, in my opinion, this week with Jordan Reed's concussion, and then there's just no one play where everybody's going, he's the play. Or earlier in the season we had Jesse James, and then Hunter Henry a few weeks ago, he was the big value play. There is no guy who everybody, it seems like, is a consensus at tight end. He definitely could be a guy who pays off if he increases his routes run and the target percentage drops, then he could keep the same production. But I think I'm going to wait and see on this one. I'm okay with missing out on the Hunter Henry train this week if he does go off for 1 million fantasy points. I think I'll be able to deal with it because of the other places you're able to save money and then pay up the side.
Now, my question I propose to you is, if Travis Benjamin is out, or Hunter Henry, or what the hell is his name? Because Tyrell the Gazelle pretty much have to be in your lineups, yes or no?
I do think that there's a very strong case to be made if you're paying up at one of the. So, I guess at the end of the day, it depends how you're constructing your running back position, because it seems like the running back position this week is just plain and simple where everybody's either getting value or trying to go contrarian and pay up. If you're getting value, then I don't think it's mandatory to get one of those two in your lineup, because you're able to pay up for those $8,000 wide receivers. But if you are paying up at one of those running back spots and not going with a double value choking lineup, then I think plugging in Tyrell the Gazelle is a great option at wide receiver.
Raz, any final thoughts on this game?
If Benjamin is out, I actually think Hunter Henry gets a bump up in my eyes, because I think San Diego goes a lot more two tight end sets. Just because, if Benjamin's out, then your receivers are Tyrell, Dontrell Inman, and then Griff Whalen. So obviously you can see some more of a cluster as well, but I think, if there's any injury issue with Benjamin, you're going to get a bump to both Henry and Gates. And they both then become on my radar even more.
Bingo, there it is. My favorite stack of this week right now that I've been building has been Phillip Rivers, Julio Jones, and Hunter Henry. So we'll see how I pivot off of that at the end of the day. But let's move on to the last three games here. We got the Buccaneers traveling out to San Fran to play the 49ers, where I have the Buccaneers as minus 2.5 point favorites with an over-under here at 46.5. Let me run through some key matchups right quick. The 49ers, obviously, as we know, are 28th overall in DVOA against the run and 31st in yards allowed per carry. The Bucs' run offense stinks. The Bucs' pass offense numbers say they stink, but it's a big spot for Mike Evans and Jameis Winston here. 49ers pass offense stinks as well. Both of these teams have not shown anything good, but Jacquizz Rodgers should be the pretty much highest owned player, if not for Gillespie. And I'm seeing and projecting right now 20 plus targets. He's going to be a great volume play and a great point per dollar play. Mike Evans is going to be maybe the second most chalkiest wide receiver next to Julio Jones this week. We've seen him, although inefficient, target levels at 12, 11, 14, and 18. And he has seen 7 red zone targets as well. I love Jameis Winston in a GPP play. This is an up-pace game for the offense. As we know, the Chip Kelly offense on San Fran moves so fast. They don't hold the ball whatsoever. And with the news of Carlos Hyde potentially being out, I don't hate a Kaepernick GPP flyer, but I feel like you might have to pair him up with Curley or Torrey Smith, honestly. Although we did see Kaepernick toss that long touchdown pass to Torrey Smith last week, he underthrew him by like 20 yards and still somehow ran for 80 yards. So that's really weird for me. But I would stay up to date with the injury news on the side of the 49ers and who you might be looking at. But honestly, in this game, I think the only places I'm looking at besides Jacquizz Rodgers is playing Mike Evans. I don't want to play both of them in cash together. Honestly, I really don't, because I have a really hard time playing Mike Evans in cash because he's so inconsistent as a receiver. He drops the ball a lot. He sees all these targets, but only may catch less than half of them. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this game? And how much chalk are you choking on with Jacquizz Rodgers?
Yeah, I brought up Jacquizz Rodgers a lot throughout the podcast so far, and now's my time to really explain why. When you look at the 49ers, their game flow has favored the opposing running back in every game except for week 1, where honestly I'm throwing week 1 for the 49ers completely out the window because that was a difference both offensively and defensively. So if we go game by game with the running backs against San Francisco, week 2 you have Fozzie Whitaker go for 16 carries for 100 yards and 2 yards. Week 3 you have Kristen Michael go for 20 carries for 100 yards and 2 scores. 4 you got Zeke going for 23 carries for 138 and a score. Week 5, you have my favorite guy, Davey Wavy Johnson, 27 carries, 157 yards, and 2 scores. And then last week, LaShawn McCoy's narrative game against Chip Kelly for 19 carries, 140 yards. Last week, Jacquizz Rodgers looked really good. For anybody who watched that game, the primetime game against the Panthers. And with Doug Martin being out at only $5,600 on a FanDuel, and then I believe $4,300 on DraftKings, I think he has a really, really good shot to find the end zone, and he's going to see a lot of volume, I believe. And then you mentioned Mike Evans as a tournament play. If you're looking for like reasoning, or if you want to hedge your bet with that, if you're looking at Jacquizz Rodgers and you know that he's going to be all the chalk, and you want to and you're thinking, so how is this game going to if Jacquizz Rodgers doesn't perform that way and I don't go with that chalk, what are the Buccaneers going to do? And the answer to that is throw the ball a million times to Mike Evans. No Vincent Jackson also helps that a lot. So I think that's some pretty sound reasoning in and of itself to go along with the fact that the Niners defense is just all in all completely atrocious. So I think Mike Evans is one of the strongest GPP wide receiver plays. He'll likely be pretty highly owned, probably upwards of 20%. But I think there's merit to that 20% ownership.
What are your thoughts, Eric, on this game?
My initial thought is somebody in this game is going to win somebody $1 million on DraftKings this week. I don't really know who it's going to be. The obvious is Rodgers or Mike Evans. The not so obvious could certainly be Kaepernick, Torrey Smith stack, or even somebody like Quentin Patton. Last week with Kaepernick, all 3 of the Niners' top 3 receivers saw 7 targets each. So he spread the ball around. I guess I obviously lead Torrey Smith because we know that Kaepernick likes to throw the ball deep. But seeing that even Patton received 7 targets and noticing that he has the best matchup according to Pro Football Focus, somebody that kind of intrigues me a little bit. Obviously, not somebody I'm going to rely a ton on. Now, also hearing that Carlos Hyde, there's a good chance he misses this game. I will have some shares of Mike Davis, and I think it's a GPP pivot from all the guys that are going to be on Gillislee, or even Jacquizz Rodgers, because he's just about, he's probably cheaper than both of them on FanDuel, but he's the same price as Gillislee on DraftKings.
There you go.
As far as Mike Evans, I think he might even be the best cash game wide receiver there is this weekend. The 49ers are number 32 in the NFL against wide receiver ones. So, the matchup is extremely nice for him. I'm thinking he's going to see 15-plus targets, and, he could certainly explode and just have a monster game.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more point to bring up in this game that all of us could pivot off to, because I don't think many people are going to remember this guy, but Cameron Brate, tight end for the Buccaneers. I think he's a great GPP flyer. Tag him up with Jameis Winston. He could be a part of the stack that wins someone $1 million. Say it's like Kaepernick, and then you go Torrey Smith, and you go like Cameron Brate. And that sounds something disgusting that could win someone $1 million, but hey, it's so, as you mentioned, I got that feeling too that someone or something from this game is going to win someone a lot of money. And the Mike Evans, Jacquizz Rodgers cop out call, I don't think will be it. But there's definitely some fantasy goodness in this game. Although I am going to go contrarian, I might be betting the under in this game, but I do like the Bucs -2.5. Last two games here, with one of them not having much fantasy upside, but we got the Pats at the Steelers. Patriots are -7-point favorites with an over/under here of 47.5. As we all know, Big Ben is out, which pretty much turns us off of all Steelers players in cash games. Brady, obviously one of the most playable guys you can have. Love Edelman this week. He's seen the most targets out of any of the receivers. Gronk is going to be a guy that's once again going to go way under-owned because of his price tag and where everyone else is going to be paying up at. I think the Pats' defense is very safe against Landry Jones. They could just cause problems with him. And I have an opinion that either James White or LeGarrette Blount is going to have over 100 total yards in total offense and a touchdown or two. So I'm looking in GPPs to get one of those guys in. Potentially, James White is a specific nice pivot away from Gillislee and Jacquizz Rodgers. Patriots' pass offense obviously is rated number 1 in DVOA and second in yards per pass attempt. The Steelers have allowed the most pass touchdowns this season. And here's some Gronk stats from the past 2 games that he's played against the Steelers. He had 9 catches, 143 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then he also had 94 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. So that's something to take a look at if you look into Narrative Street and players playing against specific teams. Gronk, always a great option. But Martellus Bennett's price tag has gone down a bit, so that's something something to look at there. I'm going to have a Patriot player in my cash game, whether it's Brady or I, slide up off of Gillislee or Rodgers to James White. I think he's almost as safe as it gets, as well in a volume and point per dollar play. And Brady's going to throw 2 touchdowns. Let's be honest. He's going to get 2 or 3. I think Edelman is potentially as safe as it gets, but I don't know if I'll be saving that value down at that price point for him. It depends really how I construct this lineup here, if I'm going double chalk on wide receiver or double chalk on running back. But we shall see. Raz, what are your thoughts on this Pats-Steelers game?
The